Okay, we're back working with that dial again. And apparently the Command H did not close it entirely, it just hid it. And so it was at the bottom. I'm still learning to use my Mac. All right, so let's continue where we left off. We had this Q dial, and I was just trying to rename it. Instead of PB, that was from push button. So I'm going to, in the edit menu, I should be able to, search and replace text. That's what I want to do. And I want to replace, I guess you can't see this, it's the bottom of my screen. I'm replacing PB with dial 1. So just going to do that real quick. All right, cool. I think now I've created this self.dial2 is what I'm doing. So I'll make a copy of most of that code. Should set its minimum and maximum to be the same, but you know what? Let's, from 0 to 100 is just fine. Let's get rid of that complexity. So now I want to have that there. I probably also want to move it. Self.dial2. I remember from working with push buttons, there was a move method. So I will move that down by, say, 200, and hopefully it still appears on the screen. And you'll see layout. We'll see how to lay out widgets later. Let's just see if that appears on the screen for us. Oh, okay, so actually I ended up moving it over and not down. Moved it 200 over and not down. Okay, so I've got two dials now. This one, so the one on the left, is responding as it should. The one on the right doesn't do anything, so I haven't connected it to any slots as we expect. Okay, so let's go ahead and whenever we press this, actually whenever we release this slider, I want the other one to jump to its position. So I'm going to say self.dial2.set position. No, what was it? Oh. Actually, let me see if I can search the functions here. I remembered it looked something like set position. So dial2 dot, so that you can see. Set, see all the methods here. Set focus, set minimum height, maximum height. Set slider position. Okay, that's the name of the function. And it, if I remember correctly, took in an integer. Yeah, it says int. That just flashed up on the screen. So really we want this value. So I'm going to save this as P. There we go. So now whenever we release the first slider, the second one should jump to whatever it is. Click, release. Yep, it jumped over to there. Click, release. All right, so now we've got it jumping. And finally, whenever one of the sliders, the one on the left, is moved at all, I think it was slider change. Yeah, there we go. That's the first thing that pops up. Whenever that changes, we're going to connect it to self.f3 and define another slot. Oops. And this is basically going to do exactly the same thing. I could probably write a function to do this. In fact, I'll do that. Let's do this. Def sync sliders. And what it's going to do is going to get the value from slider 1 or dial 1. And it's going to set dial 2 to be that. And so every time it either changes or is released, we are going to sync them. Self.sync sliders. Let's call that function from both of these. I got an error. Built-in function or method object has no attribute connect. Oh. Dial1.slider change. Apparently slider change is maybe not the right name. Let's see if this code is still good. Okay, so this code still works, but something is wrong there. Maybe it wasn't slider change. Maybe it was slider changed with an D at the end. Self.dial1.slider change. So it's funny. There is the slider change here, but that's not correct. I'm just going to guess everything else is past tense changed. .connect. So get rid of that. I'm going to put a D at the end. This is just a guess. QDial has no attribute slider changed. All right, so we need to look at the documentation. Guessing is not getting us there. I'm going to look up QDial in PyQt. So before we were looking at the regular Qt documentation, let's look at PyQt specifically. Slider change is a method. Interesting. I don't really know what that's all about. Slider pressed and slider released. There's a slider moved signal. I guess there's also a value change signal. Okay, so I'm gonna look at slider moved. Let's see if that works. Yep, that seems to keep them in line pretty well. Great. And if I get them out of line, when I first click this, it doesn't do anything, but as soon as I move it, it'll snap into position. Of course, we could change that by syncing the sliders at this time too. So we'll sync the sliders as soon as they're pressed. So whether it's pressed, whether it's released, or whether it's being moved, it's gonna keep them in sync. So even if this gets out, as soon as I click it, it snaps into position. And of course, we could, sync them by whenever we move this, we connect it to that, etc. But that's trivial. So the purpose of this exercise was just to show you how you can find a widget that you are interested in. Maybe you've seen it online. You can find it in the PyQt documentation, some information about it, find out what it's called, and you can start playing with it. Put it on your widget, see what it looks like. If you wanted to change some aspects of it, look for methods that it has in the documentation with names that look like what you want, and guess at what they do. That's what I did here. A lot of was just guessing, and then when I wanted to connect some signals, whenever I wanted to change what clicking it and moving it did, I found some signals that were named similar to what I thought that the name should be, and they all follow the same sort of syntax. You say the name of the object, dial 1 dot the name of the signal, and you connect it to a slot. You write that slot, and then maybe there's some information about it. We needed to get out the position. It makes sense that a slider should have a position. A dial is just a slider after all. It inherits from QAbstract slider, so it should work similar to how the sliders we've seen them before work. It has some sort of value, so we looked for a method that had that name. Lo and behold, it's all there. So you can usually take, once you learn a little bit, you know enough to go and find other widgets that are for the job that you need to do, and just experiment, play with it, get things wrong, get your hands dirty a little bit, and I think that's the fastest way to go.